Vic Manzo is a former certified pediatric chiropractor who has transitioned into business mindset coaching. He's a three-time author, a podcaster, and a speaker. And I am so thrilled to have him on the show today. We're going to have a great conversation, so you'll definitely want to stick around.
The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Rat Race Reboot. I'm your host, Laura Noel. And as a certified coach and former 27-year military leader, each week I provide bite-sized mindset pivots that will help you reset your mind, reawaken your spirit, and regain your control.
Hello, and welcome everyone. And first and foremost, welcome, Vic. I am so thrilled to have you on the show. I think this is going to be a great episode, very inspiring, and I'm really curious to hear all about your journey. And yeah, I think we could probably talk for hours on the topic of mindset, no doubt. But welcome.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, great. Well, I was really taken. I went to your empoweryourreality.com website, and we'll have this website in the notes. And I was just doing a little bit of reading, especially in the About Us section, and we sound like we're connected. You were talking about how you kind of were starting your business, and you initially were kind of bouncing off the walls, very in a high stress kind of anxiety type of mindset, and you actually learned the skills to calm that all down and get laser focused on the next chapter in your life and your journey. I would love to dive into some of that. But before we get into that, I do want to hear a little bit about your journey. How did you make the transition from being a chiropractor to moving into mindset coaching?
It's not the most common thing in the world you would see.
No.
I will say that. It's, I've been a chiropractor for 11, 12 years. And in the first half of my career, about the first 5 years, I was always, reading what's the top business advice that people are sharing? What's the most successful chiropractor saying? What is the self-help personal development? I was reading 80 to 120 books a year. I had a peak of 132. There was listening to workshops. I didn't listen to any music. It was always podcasts, downloading information, all those kind of things that I just was like constantly doing all the time. The good news is in 5 years, I hit my financial peak. Yay for me. What? Exhausted, fatigued. I was burned out every 4 to 6 months. Now I'm an individual who only does things when I'm passionate, when I believe in it, and I go 100%. So it was really confusing for me that I'm really passionate about chiropractic, serving my patients, making a change in the healthcare world. But then at the same token, I'm burned out every 4 to 6 months. And it came a point where I started to look at my practice, and my wife was managing the office with me, and I said, I don't know if this is worth me continuing. And she was just like, that's pretty deep for you to say something like that. I said, I feel like we're always going uphill. There's always a battle. And I just never feel like there's just something missing. And I knew deep down there was something wrong. So I said, okay, let's do some soul seeking. And that's the moment when we pivoted our office. We redirected it more to lifestyle. We took a 40% hit financially because we chose to, whatever the patients didn't align. We said, whoever doesn't align with where we're going, we'll refer them to someone so they're taken care of. But this is where we're going to go towards. We started to shift into pediatrics. And then I said, no more doing all that I was doing. That's old news. I'm going to determine and define what my success is, because my background when I was in chiropractic school, I was studying also outside of the school energy healing. And because I wanted to know the deepest principles of what healing was, I didn't realize I was going to learn spirituality, study ancient wisdom and different things along that nature. Got into quantum physics and understanding all the studies with quantum physics and life and consciousness and who we really are. Got into neuroscience and all those other principles. And it was like one of those things where I was like, I'm going to apply that, because the rule is if you from a quantum physics perspective, how you see things is what it's going to be. And I was like, well, okay, well, I'm going to define my world. So what success is, what success means, I'm going to do that. I'm going to follow the law of least effort, which means the least amount of work to get this greatest game. So long story short, I did all these things. In a little over a year, we were back at where we were financially, our financial peak. But at the same token, I was also working 50% less. I have never experienced burnout since then. And it's one of those things where I was like, we don't have to do all this doing that entrepreneurs are told. We don't have to do all these kind of things. There could be something different for them. And that's what inspired me. Like, you know what? I want to get into coaching. And this was in the end of 2017. So I was like, okay, when I'm ready, when I feel inspired to do that, I will. And it wasn't until the end of 2018 where I started getting into coaching as a side hustle or a side business. And then a little over 3 years later, starting this year, I went full time into that, and I let go of my my chiropractic practice.
Wow, my gosh, what an amazing journey. And you know what's really cool is there's so many parallels to not only the timeline, but the experience that I had. So I want to definitely dive into that a little bit more. But 2017 is also when I made that transition. And I tell people it seems bizarre and counterintuitive. And I'm also studying neuroscience. Like oh my gosh, I'm serious. This could be like a 5-day workshop. But yeah, along the same lines is I tripled my income working half the time. And it was through applying these principles and really understanding them, applying them, understanding them, and then taking action and resisting that paradigm, that thing that we're taught as entrepreneurs to work hard, burn the candle at both ends, and it's almost like a badge of honor. And there's so many people that they're missing out on the fulfillment piece of it. And you can have both, which is, it's beautiful that you're doing that and you have all of that.
It's amazing I love how you brought up the badge of honor thing, because my slogan, one of them is I help entrepreneurs achieve their dream life effortlessly. And not every time, but there's a lot of resistance when I say that word. And it's so, I understand why there's the resistance. This is, from a neuroscience perspective, from a conditioning perspective, from a neural development perspective, and just how we've been conditioned even from a genetics perspective. I can get into all that stuff. But it's one of those things, how we have such a knee-jerk reaction to think that, yeah, I work hard. I grind out 60, 80 hours, 100 hours a week. Look at all that I did, and I turned it around, and this would happen. And I always look and I go, kudos for you. Now let's look at your life and what you lost. Oh, I didn't lose anything. Oh, you did. It's there. And I don't mean that in an air. I don't want to come off arrogant or anything like that. It's just, I know from classical physics or Newtonian physics is that when you use force energy to achieve something, you have to sacrifice something else in the meantime of that. This is taught all around the world. I mean, even in business, they call it an opportunity cost. When you do one thing, you got to give up something else in order to do that. And so I'm like, if you became financially successful there and you were forcing it, then all of a sudden you had to give up on other aspects. Maybe it's your health, relationships, time with family, whatever that is. There had to be a sacrifice of some sort, because that's how that works. But when you step into the quantum aspect of things, there isn't no sacrifice. You can have your cake and eat it too. And I say this not because it sounds cool. I did it multiple times, and I'm doing it again now. When I transitioned into a coach, I've been full time this year. It's one of those things where I always tell people, I'm trying to get to the 6-hour work week. That's what I want to work, 6 hours a week, and that's it. And I know it's going to take a little bit of time because I'm testing things out, what I like, what I don't, things like that. I know where I'm going though. And some people are like, 6 hours a week, really? That's all you're going to do? Well, how much are you going to make out of that? I said, I don't know. I'm not really focused on how much I'm going to make. I want to have the 6-hour work week. And then I already know I want to fulfill my lifestyle. I already have things that I want to have and achieve and experience. So I have that all written out. I really don't care what I make. I just care about creating my lifestyle and having the freedom. If I want to go on a trip for a month, go around Europe with my family, and I'm going to work in the meantime with that, I can go do that for a month. And I don't have to worry about, like, do I have to save? Do I have to do that? The money's there, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I just had recorded an episode about the power of a decision, and multiple times in my life. And I shared just one example of, we wanted to make a difference in the Masai Mara region of Africa, and to fund this college program, it was around a little over $200,000. And I didn't have an extra $200,000 to give, but I said yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just put myself on the hook. But I felt compelled to say yes. And I funded it, but it wasn't in the way that we would traditionally think, that I just open my checkbook and write a check. It was funded within a few months. with other people, and it was easy. It was fun. It was effortless. And we get so wrapped up in how we're going to do things, and how we think we're going to do things is very mechanical action. And we don't know. It's none of our business of the how. It's just, I love that you have the clarity of your vision and the lifestyle you want and the type of work week that you want to have, and the rest will unfold.
It is. And I love how you brought some up, because this is something I fell in this trap. Even though I understood manifestation and a law of attraction and all these things, I used to I was like, this is how it needs to go. And what happens is we get so hooked on where we want it to go that we don't open the door to what's possible. And like you said, you wanted to, think of just writing a check and that's it. And all of a sudden it came a different way. And I try to teach my clients this, because I'm like, I've been there, where I have one client, he's been in business for like 20 something years. And we started in like January-ish, early end of December, January. Anyhow, he hit a record finally in his business that he thought he could never, it was like a ceiling for him. He could just never break through it. And it came in the most unique way. It was because of some other things that were happening that actually opened up the door to allow him to do that. But when it happened, he's like, I don't know. But yeah, it was just because of this. This is why it happened. It wasn't because of my efforts. I'm like, who cares about your efforts? You asked for something, you wanted this, and you got it. Like, I'm not saying it's, oh, great, it was lucky. Luck is coincidences. That's in the world of quantum. There is no such thing as coincidence. So I was like, you were at the vibe and the right energy, and you've done the work. And since you've done that work, it happened. Now accept it. I go, because what you're doing is self-sabotage, which is a whole nother limited belief system we have to work into, yes. Limited belief we have to work into now. But I was like, it's one of those things. And I used to do it all the time. Something would happen, and somehow I had a flush of new patients coming in, and it wasn't because of my efforts and what I was working on. It came out of something. And I'm like, well, I was just lucky because this is such and such. And I look back at my career and I'm just like, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, how is, because we get so hooked on the hows, we have to let every aspect of those hows to go. Even when your vision and your goals, like I said, I want to work out a 6-hour work week. I'm not attached to it. I don't look every week and go, well, did I have that? Did I not? Did I get close to it? I'm like, it's going to happen. And I'll just, all of a sudden, when the time's right, when I'm fully at that vibe, it will happen. And it's just so different, because I laugh about it, because I know how many times my wife used to tell me, she's like, "Why we're doing good right now? Just don't get hooked on how it's happening." And I always be like, "Yeah, it's just not in the way I thought it would be." But like maybe a chiropractor, he ended up leaving his space, and I ended up getting like 20, 30 new patients out of that, and it like really helped grow my business. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, but it was just because of him. And I'm like, and my wife, like, who cares? Like, you were at the right place at the right time. You attracted it, because nothing happens, nothing's coincidental. So you attracted it in your life. You're in the right place. The vibration was there, and the person came, and it all came to you, and you didn't have to do anything for it. And it took me 5-6 years of beating myself up that way, until all of a sudden now I sit back and I don't even worry. Like, everything's going to work out the way it's supposed to. It may not go at the time frame I like or what I want it to be at, maybe, but at the same token, I know it's all going to do what it does. Because when I've seen it in my career, when I let go, that's where the massive growth happens.
Yeah, and that letting go is so important. And when we're type A achievers, and when we're working with these achievers, the control piece of it, it's like I know this as well, because I catch myself, and I have to pull myself back in. And you mentioned earlier how, the high achievers that you're working with, when you talk about them having this sort of following this path of least resistance, how there is resistance in them. And I remember distinctly thinking, when I was launching my coaching business, the number of people that I would have needed to talk with in order to bring clients on, like mathematically, when I was already working a job, was just, it seemed insurmountable. And my mentor said, you're working a lot already. I only want you to talk to 2 people a week. And when I did that, it was like, oh, he's giving me permission to be lazy, But when he did that, that's when my business started to take off, because I was in resonance, in harmony with the lifestyle I wanted, the joy in which I wanted to do my work. What's the point in working if we're not finding joy in it? Right. So you're so right. It's definitely a mindset shift that needs to happen. And through repetition. It's not something that an idea that you intellectually learn. Oh, okay, because we know this. We've been hearing this. So, how did you get past that? And how do you help your clients also navigate that?
When it comes to like learning something and like building it into the neurology?
Yeah, learning something, especially that notion that we have to work hard and be in the grind. And
that first thing is when it comes to that part, right, the hard work side, I always look and I say, who told you that? Where did you learn that from? Like who, and I have to get into where the programming started, because we really got to have them understand that the whole purpose of me asking the questions is not to know exactly when it happened. It's more of just having them to sit there and go, I've just heard it for a lot. I've heard it a lot. I've heard it since I was a kid, or, like I grew up, my dad always said, I'm going to show you what hard work is from a physical labor side. So that way he did it in that way to have me not do the physical labor stuff. But it's one of those things where the reason why I do that, coming back to that, is because then once I can get them to shift their perspective to see how it's just a conditioning, it's just a belief. Once I can get there, then we can reprogram their life. Because then all of a sudden I say, okay, that's great. Does that serve you still? Do you want that to be something that you have? Do you want to work hard to be successful? Because if you believe that's the route, then that's what it's going to be. But if you believe it could be something else, and that's what you want to experience, then we can create that belief also. And then I'll show you how to now change the neurology to do that, because we have to get that programmed into the subconscious. And so there's a lot of things you do, like repetitives, like anytime. One of the things I love the best, this is the thing I've done, and I recommend this a ton of times to my clients. To change neurology, you have to become aware of how much you're saying the old story, because you can come up with a new idea. It's just like somebody, for an example, somebody can listen to something, let's say a podcast, and they go, oh my God, I love it. That's what I needed to hear. I'm solid. You're not solid, because all you're doing is hearing something that made sense to you. A week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, default mode of the brain is going to come in, and you're going to go right back to comfort and going back to what you were doing. Reason why is you don't have a system to support and change that neurology. A lot of times when my clients, I'll tell them, put a rubber band on your wrist, and every time you get back into old thinking of that old belief, I want you to do either one or two things. Now, it's up to the individual. You can just switch the rubber band to the other side of the wrist, which is the nicer way of doing things. But for some people, like myself, I need a quick impulse of a little pain, because then what it does is your brain only picks up on pain and pleasure. That's what it's always looking for. Mm-hmm. So if I create a little pain with that, I'm telling that into my subconscious. When I say that, that's something I don't want to be putting my energy towards. I want to shift it toward this. So you shift it, you snap it, or you switch the rubber band or a bracelet, and then you declare what that new belief is. And you continue to do that. Now, before, when I was in chiropractic school, when we talked about neural habits and how to adapt, it used to be around 25, 28 days. There was this whole study that they did. Yeah. New research is starting to come out showing, because of our lack of, or slowing down of our lack of or longer periods of an attention span, or the less we have, it's taking harder for now habits to kick in, on average around 84 days. So I usually tell my clients, you got to do this for 90 days. And they'll be like, 90 days. I'm like, hey, you might get it done sooner, but I'm just going off the average, which is 84 days. I'm not going to tell you 84 days, just do 90 days, 3 months. And let's see how things go. And I said, the way things are going to go, how do you know you're in that realm, right? Because there has to be I'm all about, I'm very scientific on a lot of things. As much as I'm deep into the spiritual routes and stuff, I'm also very scientific. So I'm like, here's how you'll know everything's working. The universe and life always throws a feedback system at you. So it's not what's coming up to you, showing up in your world, that's good or bad. It's not, it's just feedback. Mm-hmm. And so it's feedback of where you're vibing at. So once you understand that, so then when you're making changes in your life, if you start to see it in the physical realm, and I'm not saying to see it instantly. Sometimes you can see it, like, if you want to have $1 million and you just started a business and you want to have $1 million business, it's not going to happen tomorrow. But maybe somebody has had that happen when they won the lottery the next day. Who knows? But anyhow, long story short, the whole point I'm trying to make is that there's a process that we want to work through. And I lost my train of thought on that. The whole lottery thing threw me off. But so because I think anyhow, so I could go down a whole rabbit hole with that. But it's one of those things where you want to make these incremental changes, and you'll see it in the feedback system, and it'll show up in your life. And that's how you'll know you're kind of in tuned, in alignment to that vibe. And now you're starting to see it showing up into the physical world. And that's kind of the processes I take my clients through. There's a lot of other things we can do in that way of helping change it. But the simplest, most easiest one is just a bracelet.
I love that idea. I've never heard that. I'm definitely going to try it. So it sounds like initially is one, you've got to know what you want. And then two, you're finding out what are some beliefs that you know that are counter to that. And where did they start? Where did that belief start? And then you're becoming aware of when that belief is kind of infiltrating your current reality or your trajectory toward your goal. So then you have that bracelet or that rubber band to kind of snap. And hey, let's get to it. What would I rather believe?
100%. And and sometimes going down to know where it came from, sometimes you'll start to notice there's other ones that you go down. Like, it's like, okay, it's not that one. That was like one of them, but then there's one that's even deeper. But yeah, the whole snap thing is just to reset, and then you have an opportunity to reprogram. So nope, that's what I used to say. Here's what my new belief is. This is my empowering belief. This is what my new world's going to be. And you have to have that conviction within. Like, you have to know that when you're declaring it, it's already there. Because the subconscious mind is so aware of what you're saying. It likes to have straightforward commands. So it knows that, okay, this is what we're doing. And you can't have any doubts at all, because if you have a doubt of any sort, the subconscious knows. And so it's like, hey, no, this is what my new world's going to be. And that's it. And we're talking about decisions. You're talking about your episode with decide, right? Yeah. I love the word decide. I got into words years ago, and the word decide is like to cut other things out. So it's like kind of, removing all possibilities. And this is the only one. And so that's the kind of thing when it comes to, you decide to choose that belief. That is it. That is what it is. And that is, I call them codes. But it's one of those things where that's going to be your life that you're going to move forward to. And that's your reality. Yes. Is it going to happen all the time and you're going to feel that way? No, you're going to have your neurology hasn't changed. And so you got to rewire that brain. You got to let that neural plasticity develop. But once you start to get to a rhythm, which takes usually about 30 days, you're starting like, all right, I got this now. I haven't been messing up as much, right? The first few weeks are going to be like, what the heck? Every 5 minutes or every 10. I mean, you can, and the thing is with this, you can do this in so many ways. This is not, people have done this where it's like, talk 21 days positive about yourself only, no negative talk. And the longest I ever got, I think one time doing that really hardcore, it took me like 6 months, and I got to like 7 or 8 days without only positive. And then I had the 8th, and I was like, man, did I just talk negative? Did I think negative? I'm like, oh man, I was doing good. I never went back to it to go to 21, but I went six months straight. That was pretty decent to go that long. I'm very stubborn and determined. And I never got it. I didn't get to it, but it's just amazing. But it's a great reminder, because it does shift your psychology to be like, okay, I need to change it. And then you have an opportunity to what I call flip the script. Instead of having that energy to that, shift it to something else.
Yeah, it's in essence, instead of letting your habitual thoughts govern and lead you, you are deciding and making a committed decision to lead yourself. And in every moment, when the snap of that rubber band, you could just snap the rubber band and keep going, but you have to decide, and when you decide, I love that you said it cuts out all other options. Your energy isn't diffused. And it just, that's when people get stuck in analysis paralysis. It's, the cure to that is deciding. Just make a decision. Don't worry about the how. So I love that you're helping people at a level that in a way that is going to train their minds to really shift their thinking in any circumstance and achieve goals, high level goals, through this process. I mean, I think the process is very important, what you're teaching here.
Yeah, it's getting to the root. And the beautiful thing about this is, what I love, because I guess this is my background in chiropractic is very, chiropractic comes from a very holistic and vitalistic approach. So we look at the whole of the system. And so anytime, and from that philosophy, that's when I give nutrition recommendations or I work with someone, it's never for one thing, because we're so caught up in the treatment type thing. I do this for that. I take this for this. Instead of, no, I take this because not only does this, but it does this, and it helps every single system, helps the overall, and that's kind of the viewpoint. Same thing with this. Whenever I give advice to my clients, I always tell them, use this on every facet of your life. Don't just do it in one. Because like a lot of times they're thinking business, and I'm like, don't do this in business. You can use this in relationships, money, health, whatever you want to use it for. These are universal principles that you can shift, because we all have limiting beliefs in every aspect of our life. We've all been conditioned. We're all conditioned. Yeah, if you tell people I'm conditioned, I'm working through mine as much as I possibly can, but I also know I'll never get to the end of it. And then people are like, what do you mean you never get it? I'm like, do you know how many things that there's how much programming our mind goes through? Imagine 0 to 7, and everything that you see, for the most part, you're going to think is true in some shape, some way, shape, or form, because logic brain doesn't fully develop to age 7. And so I'm like, there's so much, but the key is enjoy the process, because it's so cool when you uncover a new layer. It's like, all right, we're going down this rabbit hole. Let's do it. Let's see what shows up. Because at the other end, you're going to be lighter. You're going to feel better. And here's the cool thing about the brain. I love this, because the brain, you will only be ready to heal or transform things and to these certain levels. You'll be, when the time comes, when you're ready for it, it's because you have the reserves to go through it. And I love that, because we're talking about effortless now, right? And the same thing, like some people get so caught up in, like, I remember when I was in chiropractic school, I was reading books about the ego. I learned about the ego mind. I'm like, oh my God. And everyone's like, we got to destroy the ego mind. It's horrible for you. And I had patients who were in business, and they'd be like, yeah, did you read this book? And I'm like, I got to break down my ego. It's so bad. And I would look at them and I'd be like going, why? And they'll be like, well, ego's bad for you. I mean, everyone, it limits us and this and that. I go, let me just share one principle with you that will diffuse that argument right off the bat. Everything in the universe, your body, life, nature, they all follow the same laws. They never create anything out of a want. It only creates things out of a need. So if we didn't need ego, would we have it? And he's like, well, no, I don't think, if you're going off that, then no, we don't need it. I said, so there's a reason why we have it. We wouldn't be here in humanity, wouldn't be where we are today without it. It's just when we let it lead our lives, that's where it becomes, creates the whole complex resistance and the issues that we see all the struggles that we do in our life.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. What a great point. And speaking of books, I mean, what are you reading these days, and how do you recommend people get started in this journey?
Love that. So right now, I'm about to get into a few books. I forget the titles of them because I just got them. I'm waiting for them to come in. But what I usually do with books, and this is, again, coming back to effortless, because I live this lifestyle in so many ways. Yeah. I remember I used to read 80 to 120 books a year, and I stopped. I still read books, but it's whatever propels, or I feel like there's a feeling I get. I teach a lot about vibe and your intuition and know what that feeling is. And when it shows up, you know that you're in alignment to where you want to go. And so I get a lot out of the thinking head to get in there. So usually a book I'll be called or attracted to go towards. But when it comes to this journey and this process, man, besides my books, I mean, I'd be a bad author if I didn't say that. Because they kind of, my first book talks about the rules of life. And the second one talks about all the challenges that you face, the darkness, how it's the beauty to light. And then the last one is all about the conditioning of the mind, how to achieve what is your potential, how to tap into your potential. And then what is a spiritual awakening, and how to either get on that journey or how to reinforce the path speed up the path you're already on. But besides those three, which are pretty in depth, those are good general books. Mine are, because it just, I go decently deep, but like I said, my first book, I could have wrote a book on each chapter.
Yeah.
But I wanted to give enough to create interest, to plant some seeds, to give a little bit of some things so that you can be like, I need to learn more, and so forth. And then you go into that realm. Yeah. But, one of the first things I would say, a book outside of mine, I talk a lot about these in my books, is the hidden messages of water. Now, this book's by Dr. Masaru Emoto, and what it is it's about how consciousness changes the molecular structure of water, words, and how everything is vibration and energy. So quantum physics has already proven this, that everything is energy. Everything's at some sort of a conscious level. They call it quanta, or they say energy. I kind of turn those terms and say, well, it's consciousness level or a vibration. But how can we see it? Our left brain needs to see that. So how can you just put the word love on a glass of water, or you say to the water, I love you, and they flash freeze it, and you look at the structure in its hexagonal form, which is it's a very high vibrational form with crystallization and so forth. Where they do the opposite, and they put hate on there, or they say to the water, I hate you, and then they freeze it, and it's unorganized. How can that happen? right? And that's the power of our consciousness and how it alters and manipulates the energy in the physical realms. And we're just starting to understand how our mind, and from just the power of visualization and what that can do, is absolutely mind-boggling. But at the same token, what we can do. And so if you want to understand the power of you as an individual, I think that's the most critical thing. And that's kind of my purpose in this life, is to help individuals rediscover their greatness. And when I say greatness, I don't mean it, I mean it in the essence from a soul perspective, because it's when we're living and coming from, remember that, then we start to live more in a fulfilled life. And I mean a fulfilled life there's no words that can explain it. And I wish there was. We can try. I mean, I know a lot of emotion names and stuff I could put to it, but it wouldn't still not explain this energy, this essence, this feeling, this depthness. Words have not come to me yet on it.
Oh my gosh. I'm so grateful for you being a light in the world. And oh my gosh, for your clients, they are very lucky to have the opportunity to work with you. I'm grateful for our conversation. And for any of our listeners, I highly encourage you to go to Vic's website, and that website will be in the show notes. Can they also get your books there from your website?
Yeah, you can get access to my latest one there.
Okay.
And then once you go to that one, you can click on my say author, and you click on Amazon with the name, and then you can see all my books that I have there.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave our audience with before we close off for today?
This is a message I love sharing a lot, because it's something that I wish I learned earlier. And that is, trust the journey, trust the process. Everything always works out for the greater good. Even though your mind's going to tell you it isn't, it always does. Because everything's always working out at where you're vibing. And once you understand that, it's all about your vibe at the end of the day. You actually get to choose. So when things are coming up, like I was talking about the feedback system, it's just got to shift your focus, shift your energy. And once you do, you keep doing that until you see it in your physical realm. And once you do, that's like, okay, great. Now this is a game. Because really life is all about a game, and it's supposed to be fun and exciting and all that. And that's kind of the more you do that, or what I tell my clients, the more I can get you to be a 3-4-year-old, the more you'll master your life even more.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you once again, everybody. Go to Vic's website. The website will be in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a 5-star review. Go to ratracereboot.com. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, everything is created twice, first in your mind and then in physical form. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.